You are on the water. The Atlantic wind is cold. Salt spray hits your face. And ahead, rising from the southern tip of a long forested island, is a small collection of wooden buildings clinging to the edge of the New World. This is New York. The year is 1664. The British have just seized this settlement from the Dutch, and a city that will one day become the most powerful in the world has fewer than 1,500 people living in it. Where you see the glass towers of Lower Manhattan today, Wall Street, the financial district, the tip of the island, there was once a rough colonial outpost, so small you could walk from one end to the other in under 10 minutes. The Dutch called it New Amsterdam. They built it starting in 1626 on the southern tip of a long island they called Mannahatta, a Lenape word meaning something close to Island of Many Hills. The British renamed it New York after the Duke of York, James, the man who ordered the conquest. But the island was not empty before the Europeans arrived. The Lenape people had lived here for thousands of years. They fished these waters, grew crops in the valleys, and moved seasonally across the land. By 1664, their population near the island had been decimated by decades of European disease and conflict. Their world was already in ruins. Walk into the colonial town, and the first thing you notice is the smell. Livestock, human waste, tanneries. The whole settlement shares a single freshwater supply, a well near the fort that serves hundreds of people and animals alike. The buildings themselves are mostly Dutch in construction, heavy wooden shutters facing the street, narrow windows with small glass panes. The British have changed the flags and the names, but they haven't yet rebuilt the town. That will come later. Most people in this town work in trade. The harbor is everything. New York sits at the mouth of the Hudson River, the deepest natural harbor on the Atlantic seaboard. Goods flow in from England, the Caribbean, the other colonies. Goods flow out, furs, timber, grain. The population is extraordinarily mixed for a 17th century town. Dutch, English, French Huguenot refugees, Jewish merchants who came with the Dutch, West African enslaved workers, freed black colonists. In 1664, there are perhaps 1,500 people here. Within 20 years, there will be over 3,000. Slavery is present from the earliest days of this settlement. The Dutch West India Company brought enslaved Africans here as early as the 1620s. Under British rule, the slave trade accelerates. By the early 1700s, New York will have one of the largest enslaved populations of any city in the northern colonies. What do people eat? Mostly pork and salt fish, oysters from the harbor. The East riverbeds are so abundant that shells pile up in middens several feet deep. Bread made from locally grown rye and wheat. Beer, which is safer than the well water. For the wealthy, sugar from the Caribbean and wine from Europe. The streets have a boundary. The northern edge of the settled area is marked by a wall, a defensive palisade the Dutch built in 1653 and the British maintained. It runs east to west across the island at what the Dutch called de Walstraat. The British keep the name in translation, Wall Street. That wall, the northern boundary of a town of 1,500 people, will become the most famous street in the world. Where you see the New York Stock Exchange today, there was a wooden palisade and a soldier counting nothing more valuable than the ships in the harbor. Under British rule, the town starts to grow, slowly at first, then with gathering momentum. The British bring the common law, establish a city charter in 1665, and create the position of Mayor of New York. Governance begins to formalize, property rights, courts, taxation. The 1680s bring economic boom. The harbor trade expands dramatically. New York begins to rival Boston as the most important port in the northern colonies. The fur trade that originally drove the settlement is fading, but grain from the Hudson Valley farms is becoming the new economic engine. But not everyone prospers equally. The poor in colonial New York live in one-room wooden houses on the edges of the settlement. They sleep several to a bed, share communal wells, and have no legal protection against landlords. Illness is constant. Life expectancy for the poor rarely exceeds 40 years. Religion is the backbone of daily life. The Dutch Reformed Church still serves the Dutch population. The British bring the Anglican Church of England. By the 1690s, Trinity Church is established on Broadway, the most powerful religious institution in colonial New York and one of the wealthiest landowners in the city. The late 1680s bring political crisis. The 1689 rebellion of Jacob Leisler, a German-born merchant who seizes control of the fort in the name of the new Protestant king, William of Orange, divides the colony for years. Leisler is eventually arrested, tried, and executed. The wounds in the community take a generation to heal. Enter the 18th century, and New York transforms. The population passes 5,000 by 1700, then 7,000 by 1720, then 11,000 by 1740. The wooden frontier town is becoming something else, a real city, with brick buildings, paved streets, a proper city hall, and ambitions that match their harbor. The wall has come down. Where it stood, the street has been widened and paved. Where you see the financial trading floors and investment banks of Wall Street today, colonists in the 1720s are standing on cobblestones that still smell of fresh mortar. New York in 1730 is a city of commerce above all else. The coffee houses on Water Street are where merchants gather not just to drink, but to trade information, shipping times, commodity prices, credit terms. These coffee houses are, in a real sense, the precursor to the stock exchange. The 1730s also bring the first newspapers. The New York Weekly Journal, founded by John Peter Zenger in 1733, dares to criticize the royal governor. Zenger is arrested for seditious libel. His acquittal in 1735 by a jury that refuses to follow the judge's instructions becomes a landmark in the history of press freedom, nearly 250 years before the First Amendment. Life for ordinary New Yorkers in the mid-17th century is shaped by a single constant fear: fire. The buildings are close together, mostly still wood, and the streets are narrow. In 1741, a series of fires burns through the city. Rumors of a slave conspiracy, some historians call it a genuine plot, others a panic, lead to the execution of over 30 enslaved people and 4 white colonists in what becomes known as the New York Conspiracy of 1741. Despite the tragedies, the city keeps growing. By 1750, New York has around 13,000 inhabitants. The street grid is pressing steadily northward up the island. Broadway, the ancient Lenape trail that the Dutch turned into a road, is now a proper street lined with substantial homes and churches all the way to the northern edge of the settled area. The city's greatest killers are invisible. Yellow fever arrives periodically from the Caribbean via the harbor, killing hundreds at a time. Smallpox strikes repeatedly in 1731, 1745, and again in 1756. The city tries to quarantine ships in the harbor, but the disease almost always gets through. Social hierarchy in colonial New York is rigid but not impermeable. At the top sit the merchant elite, families like the Livingstons, the Schulers, and the Van Cortlands, who own land, run trade networks, and control politics. Below them, the middling sort, skilled craftsmen, small shopkeepers, ship captains. At the bottom, laborers, servants, and the enslaved. The enslaved population of New York is substantial throughout the colonial period. By the 1740s, enslaved people make up perhaps 15 to 20% of the city's population. They work as dockhands, house servants, skilled artisans, cooks. Many live not on plantations, but in their enslavers' homes, in attic rooms or basement quarters. By 1760, New York's population reaches 18,000. It is now clearly the second largest city in the British colonies, behind only Philadelphia. The harbor handles millions of pounds of trade per year.
and the relationship between this prosperous colonial city and the British Crown is about to become very complicated. Then come the Stamp Act of 1665, the Townshend Acts of 1667, the tax on tea. Each measure from London lands in New York like a stone thrown into still water. The city erupts. Sons of Liberty, a resistance organization with genuine popular support, organize protests, boycotts, and confrontations with British soldiers. The tensions turn violent.
In January 1770, a series of street fights between British soldiers and New York workers near a Liberty pole on the Common, the area we now call City Hall Park, become known as the Battle of Golden Hill. It predates the Boston Massacre by 6 weeks. New York's role in the road to revolution is often understated. Where that Liberty pole stood and where those men bled on a January morning in 1770, you can walk today. City Hall Park. Office workers eat lunch there. Pigeons, park benches, a fountain. Stand still long enough and you are standing on the ground where the first blood of the American Revolution was spilled. By 1775, New York is a city in crisis. British troops are garrisoned in the city. The Continental Congress has met in Philadelphia. War has already begun in Massachusetts. In New York, loyalists who want to remain British and patriots who want independence walk the same streets, drink in the same taverns, and eye each other with growing suspicion. In July 1776, a crowd gathers in Bowling Green at the southern tip of Manhattan. Someone reads aloud the Declaration of Independence, freshly arrived from Philadelphia. Then the crowd moves to the gilded equestrian statue of King George III that stands in the park. They pull it down. They melt it into bullets. Bowling Green is still there today. The iron fence that surrounded the statue of King George, you can still see it. The tops of the fence posts were broken off that same night by the crowd, who used them as weapons. They were never repaired. Where you see those broken fence post tops today, you are looking at the moment New York became American. The British respond with invading. In August 1776, General Howe lands 32,000 troops on Long Island, the largest British military expedition in history to that point. Washington's army is defeated in Brooklyn. The Americans retreat across the East River in the night. By September, the British occupy New York. Then, 5 days into the occupation, fire. A great fire breaks out on the night of September 20th, 1776. It burns for hours and destroys nearly 500 buildings, a quarter of the entire city. The British blame American saboteurs. The Americans deny it. The cause has never been definitively established. The British occupy New York for the entire duration of the Revolutionary War, 7 years, from 1776 to 1783. The city becomes a refuge for 30,000 loyalists from across the colonies. The population swells, even as the burned quarter remains partially uncleared rubble. Tent cities appear near the ruins. The poor live in improvised shelters called Canvas Town. On November 25, 1783, the last British troops leave New York. They sail out of the harbor they had sailed into 7 years earlier. Washington rides in from the north along Broadway. Where British soldiers had marched, the Continental Army now walks. The city is American, and it will never be small again. What the British left behind was a city of 12,000 people, smaller than before the war due to the fire and the flight of patriots. Canvas Town still stood. Parts of the western waterfront were still rubble, but the harbor was intact. The trade networks were intact, and the ambition, that was very much intact. In 1789, George Washington is inaugurated as the first president of the United States on the balcony of Federal Hall on Wall Street, right here in New York City. For 1 year, before the capital moves to Philadelphia and eventually Washington, D.C., this city, this rebuilt colonial town of fewer than 20,000 people, is the capital of the United States of America. Stand on Wall Street today and look around. The street grid still follows lines laid down by Dutch surveyors in the 1600s. The Bowling Green Park is where the Dutch first held their cattle market. The streets of the financial district still show the curved, organic pattern of paths that grew from a colonial settlement rather than a planned grid. What this city teaches us is something about transformation and about the difference between growth and becoming. New York did not simply grow larger, it changed what it was again and again. A Dutch trading post, a British colonial city, a revolutionary flashpoint, the first capital of a new nation, and then something the world had never quite seen before. The 1,500 people of British colonial New York in 1664 could not have imagined a city of 8 million, but they built the harbor, they built the trade networks, they built the habit of diversity that comes from a city that was always open to whoever arrived by sea. The scale changed, the character, in some ways, never did. If you found this journey useful, if it changed how you'll think about New York the next time you walk those streets, consider subscribing. We're telling the hidden histories of the world's great cities, one time period at a time. And if there's a city or era you want us to visit next, tell us in the comments. We read every one. As always, we'll see you in the past.